to Dale Street Evangelical Church online. So last week Paul introduced us to our new year devotional series entitled Even Though, in which we'll be taking a look through the book of Philippians. And that was a letter written to the church in Philippi by Paul when he was literally locked down. But even though he was in that situation, he had lots of great advice, great teaching and words of encouragement for the church there, all of which apply just as much to us now in whatever situations we find ourselves in. So when we started this last week, we didn't know that by this time we'd literally be in another lockdown ourselves. But here we are, and even though we face these difficult times of lockdown and worries for our health and other things, then these words of the Apostle Paul are still just as true, still just as valid, maybe even more so in this situation. Anyway, I was wondering whether it's too late to still say Happy New Year now. We're over a week in now, but it's kind of my first time in front of you, so it kind of feels like I should say Happy New Year. And maybe I overthink these things, and I can probably sense you looking at the screen now thinking, yeah, you're definitely overthinking this. But I was thinking that it's perhaps one of the few pluses to lockdown is that we won't have that usual January awkwardness over how long to continue wishing people Happy New Year for. I'm thinking particularly of being at work in the office, and you pass someone in the corridor, or you meet them for the first time that year and you wish them Happy New Year. But at which point is it no longer acceptable to wish them Happy New Year? After the first week? First couple of weeks? Is it weird to keep saying Happy New Year through the third week of January, even though it's the first time you've seen them? Like I say, maybe I'm overthinking it. I mean, is it just me who even thinks about these kind of things? I guess to me it's a bit like when you see someone in the office for the first time of the day and you say, hello, good morning. And then you pass them for a second time and you kind of just give them a nod and a smile. Then you pass them a third time and a fourth time, and you avoid eye contact at all costs. And kind of saying Happy New Year too far into the month feels a bit like that third or fourth meeting of the day. And, navigating what's weird. No, it's just me. Anyway, I've digressed far too far. I guess that's another downside of being in lockdown and not having an audience here. If Naomi was sat here now, she'd be giving me the eye, telling me to move on and stop waffling. So I will do. I'll take my own hints. So anyway, I'm calling it. It's not too late. So Happy New Year. And I guess not the new year we were hoping for, but I suppose at least this time around, we do at least have the reassurance that there's vaccines available and the vaccines are out there, so an end is in sight. Now, I don't know if you're the type of person who makes a New Year's resolution. Personally, I tend to forget all about it until the middle of January, by which time I've probably already broken anything I would have made anyway, so I don't bother. Now, the polling company YouGov, they do an annual survey of New Year's resolutions, and in their most recent one, done in December last year, I don't think you'll find many surprises about what resolutions people were planning on making. The top few being doing more exercise and improving fitness, losing weight, improving diet, saving more money, and in fifth place, spending more time with family. Now that one at number 5 is quite interesting, because apparently there were twice as many people this year that were going to make a resolution to spend more time with family as in previous years. And given the year we've just had, where we've been forced to spend more time at home, forced to spend time with each other, forced to spend time with our families, even when we got sick of the sight of each other, it's perhaps encouraging actually that more people than ever are wanting to continue that trend. I guess a positive thing perhaps that's come out of these lockdowns, appreciation for family. Not just the ones that we've got to spend more time with, but the ones that we've missed. Now again, I don't know if you've made a resolution this year. I didn't personally, but I guess if I had, then it would have probably been among those that we've just read out, maybe to get fitter and to lose a bit of weight, to eat better. Like the majority of other resolutions we often make, they often concentrate on our physical health, our well-being, but how many of us this year, or any year for that matter, have ever considered our spiritual health and our spiritual well-being? And I'm not pointing a finger there, that's saying just as much as me as anyone. But I guess today I want to perhaps think about a resolution that maybe we should all consider. A resolution that's important because it reflects our commitment to our faith. It reflects our commitment to Christ. In our passage today, the Apostle Paul is writing to the church at Philippi about living for Jesus no matter the circumstance. So let's read. We're going to read from Philippians chapter 1 and verses 27 to 30. Above all, you must live as citizens of heaven, conducting yourselves in a manner worthy of the good news about Christ. Then, whether I come and see you again or only hear about you, I will know that you are standing together with one spirit and one purpose, fighting together for the faith, which is the good news. Don't be intimidated in any way by your enemies. This will be a sign to them that they are going to be destroyed, but that you are going to be saved, even by God himself. For you have been given not only the privilege of trusting in Christ, but also the privilege of suffering for him. We are in this struggle together. You have seen my struggle in the past, and you know that I am still in the midst of it. And in particular there, I guess it's that first part of verse 27 that I want to initially focus on. Above all, you must live as citizens of heaven, conducting yourselves in a manner worthy of the good news about Christ. So the resolution that I think we perhaps should all consider making is to let your manner of life be worthy of the gospel. If you go back a few verses in the chapter, back to about verse 18, Paul discusses a dilemma he has. He's got a real desire to be in heaven with Jesus. He longs for the time when he will be. But he realises that God has a plan and a purpose for his life on earth still. Perhaps summed up best in verses 21 and 22, which say, "For to me, living means living for Christ, and dying is even better. But if I live, I can do more fruitful work for Christ. So I really don't know which is better." As he works through this dilemma, Paul decides he really needs to stay around in this world for a little longer. His selfish ambition to be with the Lord needs to wait because Paul still has a purpose to help others grow in the grace and knowledge of Christ. Which brings us to verse 27 and what we're focusing on today. The verse starts, above all. Paul is emphasising that what he is about to talk about is of the utmost importance. In the NIV, it phrases it slightly differently and starts, whatever happens, stressing the importance of what is about to be said. No matter what happens, you must follow this instruction. And the instruction that we must follow no matter what, above all else, is to conduct ourselves in a manner worthy of the good news about Christ, to strive to let our manner of life be worthy of the gospel. Now, can you see now why this would be such a good resolution for us to make? Now, the word in here that is translated to manner, it's quite an interesting word, and it's usually used, so I've read. I'm no expert on these things, but apparently it's used to mean something to the effect of living as a citizen, which is kind of spelled out in the NLT version, where it's made clear with the word in the verse where it talks about living as citizens of heaven in a manner worthy of the gospel. But for the people of Philippi, this would have had extra meaning because they had a great deal of pride in their Roman citizenship. They held a privileged status as a Roman colony, and its citizens understood that honour, and they were proud of it. But not only were they a Roman colony, but the city also possessed the highest privilege obtainable by a provincial municipality. The citizens of Philippi could buy and sell property. They were exempt from land tax and poll tax, and they were entitled to protection by Roman law in the same way as the citizens of Rome were. Paul himself obviously was a Roman citizen, and he used it to his advantage when he needed to. In Acts 16 we read about how he used it to get released from prison. So in using the word that he did here, Paul was encouraging the people of Philippi to put the same pride they had at being citizens of Philippi into also living as citizens of heaven. Heavenly citizenship has a higher standard and has a higher stature than even the great Rome had. And our lives are to reflect our citizenship in heaven. When we don't live up to being good citizens of our country, it reflects poorly on our country. You can probably think of some obvious examples. One that sprang to mind for me was often during football tournaments like World Cup and the European Championships, and you get the supposed England football fans who go on the rampage, drinking, fighting, causing damage, and no matter how many England fans are over there that are behaving well, and then you get this, what is genuinely a minority of the fans behaving badly, it reflects badly on all of them, and it reflects badly on our country. When we don't strive to live a life worthy of the gospel, it reflects poorly on God. And it reflects poorly on other Christians too, and they have to work harder to overcome the poor behaviour of others and the poor image of God that comes out of that poor behaviour. We are encouraged to let our manner of life be worthy of the gospel, because our new existence is based on being obedient to the call of the gospel. And what does a worthy life look like? Now don't worry, a worthy life isn't necessarily a perfect, sinless life with zero mistakes, which is good, because otherwise we'd all be stuck, because that's just unachievable. It's not realistic. I mean, I'm sure that would be great if we could all do that, but it really isn't realistic, and it'd just be setting us up for failure. In reality, we all have our struggles at times, but I guess a couple of thoughts on what a life worthy of the gospel looks like comes out of these verses. Firstly, a life worthy of the gospel calls us to stand firm in our faith. In verse 27, we've looked at the first part of verse 27, but it goes on to say more. It goes on. Then, whether I come and see you again or only hear about you, I will know that you are standing together with one spirit and one purpose, fighting together for the faith, which is the good news. The phrase that is translated here as standing together, and sometimes translated as standing firm if you look in other versions, it's a military term. It's used of a Roman soldier at his post. And this was a serious matter, because if a Roman soldier fell asleep or failed to carry out his duty, he was put to death. This is what the word used by Paul means, which would have really highlighted the importance of the readers of the letter in Philippi, as the importance of standing together and standing firm for Jesus. We are to stand for him as if our very lives depend on it. And in some ways that they really do. We are called to stand firm in any and every circumstance. A Roman soldier could make excuses for falling asleep on duty, but it wouldn't be accepted. It wouldn't actually excuse what he did. He would still be put to death. He was to stand firm no matter what. And verse 28 goes on to say, don't be intimidated in any way by your enemies. This will be a sign to them that they are going to be destroyed, but that you are going to be saved, even by God himself. So stand firm in your faith, no matter what. God is bigger than whatever you are facing, whatever situation you're in. Now, living a life worthy of the gospel also calls us to fight for unity of spirit and mind. In verse 27, as we've read, we're told to stand together with one spirit and one purpose, fighting together for the faith. A united front gives strength. As Christians, we can achieve far more if we are united in purpose. A lot, when you look around in the world, a lot of problems in the church often come internally from internal disputes and disagreements with either within churches or with other churches, basically Christians disagreeing with Christians. It's often not coming from the outside at all. And yet, even across different denominations and churches, there is often far more common ground than there are differences. And the world will really take note if we stand firm together. In the same way that a single Roman soldier wasn't really all that formidable, just on his own, you could send one soldier to a town somewhere, it wouldn't have been all that effective. As an isolated individual, he's just one man. In that same way, we aren't to stand alone in isolation. We are stronger through serving together. I guess it's one thing, though, to be united in spirit and mind, but we actually need to take it further And living a life worthy of the gospel also calls us to fight to put our unity into action. It's one thing to say we're united in spirit and mind, but we also need to show that. We need to put it into action. In other words, it's one thing to say we're standing together in one spirit and one purpose, but we also need to fight together for the faith, which is the good news, i.e. the gospel. And the word translated as fighting here has its root in athletic terminology that emphasise teamwork. As a church, and not just locally here at Dale Street, or even in the area of Ossett or in Yorkshire, but as a church globally, teamwork and unity is important if we're going to carry out our mission. The growth of the church, both numerically and spiritually, falls on all of us. And it doesn't matter what circumstances we face. This should be our desire. This should be our goal, to live a life worthy of the gospel. The verses go on in 29 and 30. It goes on to say, "For you have been given not only the privilege of trusting in Christ, but also the privilege of suffering for him. We are in this struggle together. You have seen my struggle in the past, and you know that I am still in the midst of it." In these verses, Paul reminds us that there will be times of struggle. There will be times of suffering. As we know, Paul was imprisoned as he writes these words, chained to his jailers, leading by example. And that's a really important point. Yes, we face times of struggle, times of difficulty. But it's not just a good thing if we continue to live a life worthy of the gospel during these times. It's a vital thing. It's critically important. We are witnesses to the world through our words and actions. And it's through those words and actions that the world gets a glimpse of Christ. And if our faith and way of life crumble in adversity, then it doesn't really give a great image of God to the world. So whether you're the type of person who makes New Year's resolutions or not, let's strive to live lives worthy of the gospel in all situations, even though we're in lockdown, even though we're in the midst of a pandemic, even though we're facing many other struggles and difficulties at this time. But remember that a key part of this is that we're not alone in this endeavour. We are united. We are together. If you feel like things are too much, are too difficult, then reach out. We're stronger together. Even though we can't be physically together, stay connected, stay strong, stay safe, and let's all live lives truly worthy of the gospel, worthy of our citizenship of heaven. And let's do this together. Thank you.